Ed Borbely is the Director of Program Development and Learning Systems for the University of Michigan College of Engineering, a veteran of IACEE, and also a veteran panel member. Now I'm going to sit down and be a panelist. So, Ed, take it away.
I want to welcome you all to what will be a very brief but hopefully enriching final plenary panel here. I'll talk a little bit about our discussion format and then introduce the panelists. First, we're going to have little time here to get into details, so I think we're going to try to keep things at a fairly high level, strategic level, but also talk about things that we may want to do differently when we get back home. I think that's the key for the value proposition for attending a program like this. We will be passing a mic around, so please feel free to gather your thoughts for a question. And I would ask those of you coming from another country to remember that if you want to ask a question in Finnish or Mandarin, we can handle that. So please feel free. Let me just give a quick introduction to our panel here. Ian Temple is someone I've had the great pleasure to get to know a little bit just in the last couple of days of the conference as we prepared for this. I love your title, Ian. Education Futurist is really, this makes you someone that we will want to speak to this evening, I think, at the museum. But I'm not going to read through these introductions. The slides certainly will be available, and you can talk to each one of these folks over the course of the evening. But clearly a tremendous track record in strategic thinking about higher education and industry and how technology plays a role in our relationship. Kirsti Miettinen is Business Area Director for Aalto Pro, and I intend to ask her a little bit about what it's like to move from a traditional higher education institution into a small enterprise and to try to work effectively with the faculty now that you're no longer necessarily part of the institution. Again, I'm not going to read all the bullet points. I'll let you take a look at these slides. Paul Marca is a man who deserves no introduction. Let's get right into it. I would like to start by asking Paul about something that we discussed a while ago that I think Andy has touched on also. What do you see as the challenge and the opportunity for those of us operating at this interface here, this key interface between traditional research universities and other types of traditional academic institutions and industry in a world that's changing as fast as it is, and if you could say a little bit specifically about the impact of massively open online courses in all of that.
Sure, thank you. So one of the reflections I had as Ed and I were talking about this, actually these last 3 days, is the notion that increasingly the massively open and online courses has put the white-hot spotlight on what I will call extended education, broadly writ. And at Stanford, we've had a project in the D School to think about the future of education. You can actually Google that website. And one of the things I loved about that project was the notion that education in the future is changing from a 4-year so think about Stanford as a time in your life or at your university at Georgia Tech. And rather now, how can universities change to think about Stanford for a lifetime? And I think our opportunity as continuing engineering education organizations is moving from interesting auxiliary actually to center, front and center. And I think that's the opportunity that I see. Because Stanford for a lifetime or Georgia Tech for a lifetime means that you have to think about students differently. You have to think about credentials differently. I loved in the session I heard Mr. Wang talk about the China's credit bank, a national Chinese repository for accreditation to track students. It's a wonderful concept. something that we're going to have to wrestle with, but I see tremendous opportunity in this discussion this last couple of days, and also for those of us in continuing engineering education organizations.
So, Ms. Feng, I think what Paul is alluding to here is a world where it becomes a little bit more difficult to assess the credentials and competencies of people who come to you. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about what Baosteel does to assess competencies and how that may represent change for us in the traditional context of degree granting, credentialing, and then sending people off to you for their career.
In Baosteel, the human resource department usually don't make assessment when they recruit the new employees every year. Just as they set the bottom line for the new employees when they apply for joining our company. But the human resource department just gave some suggestions and made some disciplines for the business unit. The business unit will have some experts to make assessment through the interview with the candidates. Yeah.
So these are subject matter experts in that area of the business.
In that area, because they are very familiar with the position requirements, and they understand what they want. So they usually during the interview they can make assessment about their competency. But the interview will be 2 rounds, and then if the candidates can be received by the units, they are very lucky. But it's the first step. But in Baosteel, we mostly focus on the assessment on the performance, not the competency, because every year we just set the performance goal for every position, for every employee, and let them know what they want to do and what's the standard or the goal. And at the end of the year, the human resource department are very busy with this performance evaluation. So we pay much attention to the assessment of the performance, not the competency. That's our situation, yes.
Early performance.
Yeah.
Ian, you're in a very different business, obviously. It's not a heavy industry. It's a clearly a knowledge industry. But if you could say something about sort of how people are judged at the front end before they're brought into Cisco, I think that would be useful for us too.
We're definitely going through a shift. So, in my capacity, one of the things I'm always doing is working with different universities, right? But as I try and see where the future's heading, I'm also asking the same question for Cisco. So as I work with our different business units, historically we've recruited from lots of different universities across the US and across the world. And the name universities like Stanford and others, right? We would always want to recruit generally from those more premier universities. And the shift I'm seeing is it's much more based on, can you get it done? Can you do the job? Are you shovel ready? And if you can come in and do that, then there's much less of an emphasis on what school did you go to and what degree did you study. If you can get it done, that's the focus. Now, the interesting construct, or maybe the interesting challenge, is even though we may have a vice president of a given business unit at Cisco, and yes, we are in a lot of businesses, routers, switches, wireless access points, video endpoints, internet security, physical security, et cetera, et cetera. And those individual VPs that may be wanting to recruit into their business unit, they may have an interest in somebody who can really get the job done and not care where they went to school. But structurally, our human resources organization and our recruiting engine is still based on kind of that old paradigm. And we haven't yet been able to figure out how do we do this based on competency. So the needs of the business units, while they are really focused on, I don't care where you went to school necessarily, can you get this job done? Regardless of where you are from in the world, and in many cases, regardless of where you live in the world or what language you speak, being able to get those candidates, there's a lag there that we're trying to figure out.
Well, it sounds like that gets back to what Ms. Feng was talking about with needing to engage people in the subject matter expert category before bringing people on board. This also obviously assumes that people are going to be fairly agile and continue to learn over the course of their career, which once again challenges universities to be able to deliver content in that in this new sort of granular way.
Actually, I'd like to continue from that, even though you don't ask, that in our case in Finland, where we provide professional development, so we are not providing master's courses in Finland, and in many Scandinavian and some European countries, the first degree is actually, I mean, the Bologna process is 3+2, but actually when we talk about continuing education, we talk about professional education for those who are at workplace and not providing degrees, certificates, open courses, and so on. But the point, when I always talk to colleagues, I say that we don't go to companies to HR because of this. We go to see the line managers. We want to get in and talk with those who are doing the business and who are talking about the competencies that, and performance that those people are needing.
So I want to pick up on that reference to sort of non-traditional ways that higher education and industry can work together. And I wonder if there are sort of ways that don't have anything to do with traditional classroom instruction per se, training or education, that sort of come to mind. Are there things like instructional design and other approaches to education and training that we should be collaborating with your subject matter experts? That you're engaging them in the hiring process now, maybe we should be engaging them more fully in education and training and collaborating in some ways.
I have been working in the training department in our company for more than 6 years, and I have been responsible for the courses development. But in the past 6 years, just totally 1,200 courses have been developed. But I think it's very slow because we cannot match the demands of the employees' training requirements. In Baosteel, in our company, we demonstrate that employees keep lifelong learning. So as a training platform, we strive to give a support to the employees to maintain their learning. But the courses have developed so slow. So I also think we need, Baosteel also need the MOOCs. But as the president of Stanford University point out at the first day, he said maybe there are some shortcomings for the MOOCs. For example, the investment is very huge. Maybe the cost is higher. But for business, for me, for our company, maybe the money maybe it's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem, just I think, is the time. I have mentioned that our development of the courses are very slow. The time cannot match the requirements. And another problem is the capability of the courses development. Because in our company, just most courses are developed by our engineers. But our engineers, just the technology specialists, they are not very good at the courses development. So in in this sense, I think that's very much room for the collaboration between universities and our business. So if the first suggestion to the universities, of course, in China, I like them to develop much more courses like the soft skills of the students. For example, how to organize a meeting, the teamwork, how to do teamwork, how to prepare the presentation like that. And then when the students graduate and join our company, our institution can share the courses developed by the universities through the MOOCs. I think that's a good collaboration. And another suggestion is when our institution develop our courses, we hope the university's professors can help us. Now, the first method is to involve in our course development team, just to develop the courses directly, to help us. And the second is to make to make instructions to train our engineers how to develop courses, or how to change the traditional courses into online courses. I think it's a method, it's a technology maybe. I don't know, maybe there are some know-how in it. And another, I think they can help engineers to design, to make instructional design of the courses development. I think that's a very big room for the collaboration between the professors and our business. Yes.
Well, could you talk a little bit about some of the ways that Stanford is trying to address those needs, even with existing content? We heard Andy refer to a project that Mike Rowan was working on to chunk out courses and maybe get to that ultimate goal of splitting the atom of the semester credit hour that we need to start to work on.
Well, I mean, I think you heard from Leonard Lane this morning. I think just like Baosteel and Cisco, companies are interested in maintaining an educated workforce as a competitive advantage. Universities are often interested in pushing out undergraduates and graduate students who have discipline-specific work, but to Ian's point, maybe don't know how to, are not shovel-ready. I love this quote. And the role that we see is working much more closely with companies to understand the needs analysis, and provide education that meets that target. That doesn't feel like the kind of education that's delivered certainly at the graduate and the PhD level. And yet, as we as universities try to supply talent for the workforce, we have to wrestle with this tension between a graduate degree and what a ready workforce needs to be. And I think that this is where projects like the one we undertook with Lee and Feng, forcing our faculty and our organizations to wrestle with this tension is really important. And in fact, I'll have to say that we did actually talk to Cisco about how we might enable this project. And in the end, we decided on another option, one that was more flexible, for the sole purpose that we wanted to experiment. I think Andy made mention of this. We wanted to experiment, and we kind of failed. We needed to do that as an organization in order to, and I use failure as a small f, moderately successful, I would say, as you heard from Leonard. But we learned a lot in that journey and the project that Mike Ruan built.
By the way, just the notion of tension, I love that word. I mean, tension oftentimes is looked upon as a negative word, I think, by most of us, right? We don't want tension, but there is a healthy tension there. It's like I look at our engineers, I think they're some of the best in the world, but to ask an engineer to develop curriculum and think about pedagogy, I'm not even sure if they could spell pedagogy, but that's a tall ask. And who knows more about curriculum design and pedagogy than some of our best universities, right? So there's, but yet but industry always knows more about engineering than a university because we're doing it. It's more relevant. It's more present, and both are right. So I think the notion of working together in collaboration is great. I mean, we're actually working with a few different universities right now to actively develop cybersecurity curriculum for an undergraduate degree program based on cybersecurity. Now, we're not experts at curriculum design, but we know a reasonable amount about network security and cybersecurity. So wouldn't it be interesting if we could collaborate to create a degree program so that you have some more people that could actually fill the jobs that are going unfilled in America and elsewhere?
Again, I could continue. In our university, our president last autumn, she and her closest vice rectors, they took all the 50 biggest Finnish companies, industrial companies, and those who work with Aalto University, and they went to visit all of them at the top level and had discussions on collaboration and what should we be doing, and what I found very good, which we should take down back to what we are doing in our continuing education business, is not to go to industry and think that, okay, they know better what the engineers want, because actually what they said was that don't come to us and ask what do we want. You are a university. Come and tell us what do we have to want. I mean, you know the future. I think it was a good answer.
Well, to follow up on that, can you give some examples or even just one good one that leaps to mind of a collaboration of the type Ian was talking about, where that tension that can sometimes hold up a bridge is in play?
You mean in collaborating in course design?
Yeah.
Well, I would actually give a good example in that sense that what we should do at the university side is really, at least what we think we are course designers, and we know about the adult learning. It's not the faculty people. They know about undergraduate learning, and it's not about the company people because they do their business. So it's us who always then bring together, always when we design a course, we bring together people from industry and from faculty, but we are the course managers.
Paul, could you say a little bit about the type of collaboration you strive for in a global context? When Stanford is trying to reach around the world, what are the key ingredients there in terms of partnerships?
So and we heard that in some of our presentations today, how to deliver. I know Carl at A State is delivering in Asia, and have done a marvelous job with Jeff Goss in doing this. A couple things that we look for. We know that our faculty are great in certain domains. They may be world class, but that often doesn't necessarily translate in the local community context. So to what extent can we partner with other universities who are in residence there and other business leaders or organizations or experts to try to contextualize what Stanford is doing? That's really important. For example, we went to Lille, the Lille Nord region, very interested in revitalizing that region around innovation and entrepreneurship. What we did is we provided a baseline education here at Stanford and then worked with a local university, a great business school, ADEC, to try to offer some contextualization, because the lessons that work here in the Silicon Valley around innovation and entrepreneurship don't necessarily translate word for word in that setting. Yeah. So it's really important for us to build that, and also then get leaders from the area to try to help supply additional guidance as these startup companies technologies were trying to make their way in the marketplace.
Kilu, if I could actually call on you now to respond to a question. I really would like to have the opportunity to hear a little bit about what it's like to move from a traditional academic environment to a small business, a small enterprise environment, and just if you have an example of ways that that has turned out to be an opportunity, faster pace, more agility, things like that, and where it's been a challenge.
or survival tips to deal with major change?
Ask me after 2 years, but because this is a new thing. But of course, like all of you guys who are doing continuing engineering education, you are doing it by not too much supported by the university. I mean, money-wise, you have to be self-sufficient. You have to earn your money, and it's about that. But of course, when moving from that kind of environment into a business environment, everything becomes much more, in a way, clear, in that sense that now everything is more about doing business. Actually, even the faculty is seen to be more, that we have to have clear business deals with them, and we have to talk much more about IPs. We did, because we were inside the university, it wasn't even an issue when we started to talk about designing a course together with faculty. But now when we are a company, even though we are owned 100% by the university, it's an issue. So there are many things that become an issue. Nowadays, I would have called in and I used to call my people who went to customer, they were our program managers, they were people, solution providers. We are talking about account directors and account managers. It's a different world. And think about my staff, they've been working for 25, 30 years at the university, and now we are in business. It's interesting.
That's a very creative approach to continuing education. I mean, I'm not familiar with great examples here in the States of being that sort of agile and entrepreneurial and saying, hey, we're going to take this asset and we're going to let it fly and turn it into a company. And let's see what happens. And that's risk-taking.
Wait for 2 years and I'll tell how we survived. It will be fun.
So, Ian, Cisco has a reputation for hiring very talented young people. So I want to give you this.
We make exceptions, though.
Okay. How should continuing engineering education organizations address the needs of a new generation of industry students who want anywhere, anytime access to learning, including the use of mobile and social media? And how can universities and companies work together to get multi-generational workers to be successful and help?
So that wasn't a softball you just asked me.
Sorry.
That wasn't a softball question, no. I don't think.
Sorry about that.
So this is something, it's interesting. One of the things that some of you may or may not have seen or heard about at Cisco is globally, we have been redesigning our offices. It used to be that we had, I used to have an office with a perfectly good door that opened and closed. Those days are over. And earlier in my career, I used to have a cube that had ample space for me to put my things out. And now I work in this new collaborative work zone where it's open and interesting, and there's lots of collaborative spaces, and now we have ping pong tables and foosball tables. And this was done for two reasons, and two very conscious reasons. Part of it was economic, because the average square footage per employee used to be about 675 square feet. Now it's down to 170 square feet. That includes common space. The other reason we did it is from lots of focus groups and lots of data about the fact that millennials don't want to come into an environment where people's doors are closed. They want to be in a more interesting, open environment where you can collaborate and chat and play foosball. Are you a foosball expert?
I can beat you being
Okay, we'll have to figure that out one of these days. So it's an adjustment, and that's because we've got 5 to 6 different generations of workers that we're now trying to serve. So, one of the challenges that we have right now is, we've been in business 30 years. We're a $50 billion company with 70,000 employees. Does a kid coming out of college that's got a degree in engineering from Stanford want to go to work for Google or Facebook or Cisco? That's a question that's being asked. So we're trying to coolify ourselves to come up with a great new word. But this is a challenge. And then the social media aspect of this from a recruiting standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, that's a whole nother challenge. I think we're getting better at that than we used to. But we're definitely at an inflection point structurally and as a company. How do you remain? I'll close the point with this. I had a group of graduate students from both a school in London and then a separate trip from University of Ottawa. And I had hosted them, and they said to me, Ian, if you're a $50 billion company, you can't be agile or creative. And I had to explain how we still can be, but it's a challenge when you're this big.
Okay, so we have some questions that people have submitted, and then if anybody has individual questions, just let me know. So the first question we have for Ms. Feng, and it is, how can you validate the education of employees if they're through MOOCs, or do you not consider this to be a problem?
I do think that MOOCs is our direction in the training and lifelong learning of the employees. But we surely have some programs. Just now I have mentioned that the time we cannot meet the requirements of the training or learning requirements, cannot match with it. So we should speed up. So speed up, just so we need the MOOCs. Yeah, it's one reason. Another is we have less ability to develop the MOOCs ourselves. I think it's maybe not only the technical program, but also our understanding of the courses, because the MOOCs, the online courses are very different from the traditional courses. So how to understand the online courses? I have seen a successful case in POSCO. POSCO is also a steel company, our counterparts in South Korea. According to the profit, POSCO is #1 in steel industry, and Baosteel is #2. So we learn from them. Last year I visit POSCO's training center. I found that POSCO's employees have enjoyed the MOOCs. Every employee in POSCO have a mobile phone. They can study anytime, anywhere. Even on their production line, during their have a rest, they can maybe learn something. Yeah, so I think they have invested much on it. So how to solve the problem of the capabilities in developing online courses? I find they have 3 solutions. One is they have set up a university themselves. So there are a POSCO industry university in this company. And there are many professors, are very famous professors. And the professors will understand the nature of the steel industry. And so they can develop the courses to or participate in the development of the courses for the employees. This is one solution. And another is they have arranged over more than 100 persons just involved in the courses development. Their job just to develop the online courses. And another is the outsourcing of the MOOCs. So I think that this is a very successful example for Baosteel.
And this is one of the opportunities perhaps for universities to collaborate with industry too, because as you said, it's more an issue of the amount of time than money from your perspective, at least.
So I suggest that professors in China can pay much attention to the enterprises, the demands in the courses development, and to look for the method to cooperate or involve in the activities of the business, and to apply their methodologies for business development.
Excellent.
That's my suggestion. Okay.
Megan, do you have another question?
I do. So this is for Mr. Temple, and it is, which competence do you give more value among your managers and among your engineers?
I'm actually going to converge that into one. One of the things that we're trying to do is to create engineering leaders. And part of the challenge is that in some regards that could almost be an oxymoron, right? I mean, historically, you've had engineers that have been engineers, but being great leaders that are strong communicators, that are articulate and all of those sorts of things. That hasn't necessarily been something that's come together. So we actually were working with one university, this was about 2 years ago actually, where they had proposed to us a hybrid MBA, Master's in Engineering degree program that they would create for us, but with us. And one of the challenges was that we do a lot virtually. You may have heard of something called WebEx. We use WebEx a lot. You may have heard of something called telepresence. We use video and telepresence. And we do this all over the world. And telepresence used to be kind of this fancy conference room deployment. Now it's something that you can do on a laptop. So we use video a lot. And we came back to the university, and I actually was working with our CEO on this because he had strong ties to this university. And we came back to them and said, okay, we're not going to do it full-time in person. That's not going to work. We have engineers in India. We have engineers in Russia. We have engineers here. We have engineers all over the world. It's got to be a hybrid program. If there's a face-to-face, maybe it'll happen once, and it won't last longer than a week. Redesign the whole approach and redesign the curriculum, because this is the new world we live in. And when you do things via video, you can actually design the curriculum, we think, where it can be pretty engaging and effective. They didn't have another response.
We'd be happy to help.
Good response. So to answer the question, which value do we treasure more? With our engineers, we want them to be great engineers, and not all of them will become great leaders. With our great leaders, we want them to have a deeper understanding of technology because they work for a technology company. But it depends on the role you're in. I mean, in my role, it's more important I understand the inflection point and intersection between technology and its impact on teaching and learning, and it's less important for me to know about the chipset that goes into a router that a customer might buy. Did you want to add to that?
Not about chipsets.
Well, we have the next question for you, so it works out well.
That worked out perfectly.
What have you found to be the most helpful in being the, quote, glue between industry and university?
So
It's a sticky question.
In a couple of instances, we've heard the word about flexibility and adaptability. I think as we talk to industry, we really want to understand the needs and try to identify those needs. And then what we play in the university setting is matchmaker, and we do try to find faculty who have subject matter expertise that we can leverage, but also faculty members who can work with us. So we're sensing about how flexible they will be to create a program, whether it's a graduate offering, where we look for sequences of courses, maybe adapting some material, or professional programs where we may build something completely from scratch, as we're thinking about contemplating now. So I think this notion of changing, more often universities have often sat back and said, well, traditional university, here's our menu, a list of content, and thinking about ways how we can adapt and work with our faculty to convince them over time to address those needs. And then creating a product or a service that also meets I think you hit it, the global dimension of the workforce now. It's no longer the case that everyone's going to come to Stanford or everyone's going to take it online. In fact, this notion of a blended learning experience is almost out of the gate what we're trying to design. So.
Okay, we have one more, and it's for the entire panel. And it says, As the conference comes to a close, what do you suggest that we take away, and what do you yourself plan to take action on?
I can start. I loved what actually Andy wrapped up everything that we all have been probably thinking and taking away, but I love the 4L, and I'm now thinking that how can, with all this online and MOOCs, and like for a small country like Finland where our university is not branded to the top, I'm sure the MOOCs from MIT and Stanford and whatever, they will be there. They are going to be there. There will be things like anything in web. But what is that 4L that me and my group and people like, us in our organizations, how can we make that happen? And I'm going to work on that. Liquor, love, life, and learning.
Well, so I'll add in, the notion of adopting. So don't adopt a pet, but adopt somebody in industry, right? Reach out to those in industry to figure out what is it that I can do with them, what value add might I be able to add, and I'll give an example of a university that I feel very fond of because I've worked a lot with them, and previously, in my opinion, they were kind of an island that I'd never even heard of or spoken to. San Jose State is somebody we've all heard of. San Jose State is based in the city of San Jose. Some would say that, I guess it's the city of San Jose says it's the capital of Silicon Valley. So here's this university that's in the capital of Silicon Valley. I've lived here for 24 years. I've worked with universities and education and public sector for that time. And I never heard anything from San Jose State. I mean, there just didn't seem to be a whole lot of outreach to industry. They had a new president that came aboard 2 years ago named Mohamed Kiomi. And President Mo, as he goes by, one of the first things that he did was he started reaching out to industry, not just Cisco. But I actually went to an industry event where normally you see other like tech geeks, not a university president. And I immediately knew that he was different. And he was actively cultivating relationships with people in industry, not just Cisco, Apple, Google, Adobe, and others. And the effect that is now having on his university. I mentioned the curriculum design example earlier. One of the schools we're doing that with is San Jose State. If you look at the amount of interaction that our San Jose State deans and leaders have with our executives, there's a very healthy sort of exchange of information back and forth. That had virtually not happened at all before. So what I would encourage you all to do is, who are the leaders in industry within the geography that you serve? And how could your leadership interface with some of their leadership so that both parties can learn something that you may not have been able to have learned before that outreach? If I look at some of the executives at Cisco that I've engaged, it's remarkable what we're learning from each other. And the final point was this got to enough of a level of progress that the new chancellor for the Cal State University system, he now has quarterly mentoring calls with our CEO, John Chambers. And none of us are involved in those discussions except these two leaders. And John has even acknowledged that he has a deeper understanding of the needs of education than he had previously. And this is a guy who some would say is reasonably bright. He's our CEO. And here he is interfacing with the leader of the largest university system in America. This is something that should have happened way before, right? So don't adopt a pet, adopt somebody from industry.
So a couple of the surprises and reflections from the conference. First, I don't know how many of you attended the Tuesday evening session with The Evolution. And there's a woman there who was introduced as a non-traditional student. Now, I think if you buy the fact that lifelong learning is critical, that you need to continue to remain educated throughout your entire career, and you also get a sense of this notion of a Stanford for a lifetime as opposed to Stanford as a time in your life, the journey that we're creating a network of on-ramps and off-ramps for this non-traditional student. the call to action that I see is an opportunity to take that non-traditional concept and make it integrated into the university. So we have, even with all the oversight that we have weekly meetings with the Office of General Counsel to make sure we're behaving and doing the right things. I think the opportunity to talk with the registrar, to talk at the Baosteel level at Stanford, to say, hey, how Stanford conceived, will conceive of these students in the future? What role will they play? How can we engage even our alums who will need that continuing education, that lifelong learning education, maybe as the first step in recognizing and moving the concept of a non-traditional student to an integrated Stanford student for a lifetime.
I love that.
We're at a point now also, Paul, and if you have anything to say about this, I'd love to hear it, where because some of the activities and the levels of appointments related to digital education and online learning, as it's going to be done here on our campuses, what is Stanford? What does it mean to be Stanford in an online environment when you're actually focusing on the truly traditional 18 to 22-year-old? I think as folks who have been working on online learning probably longer than anybody else on our campuses, we have this kind of difficult, it's almost a dilemma, because we need to continue to serve the people who can't physically be here, and yet we could serve quite a transformational role on our own campuses. And I think you're one of the folks around the country, one of the few who are playing a role in both areas.
I mean, we've been challenged by the Dean of the School of Engineering and also Bern Giroux, who attended here, to listen, how can you take your core competency in online learning and not only serve those students in industry, but also our first-class citizens on the campus, who, by the way, have never grown up without the internet. And do you think a freshman coming into Stanford is not going to expect that? You mean every class is not online and ready to go? Yeah. It's not modularized and gamified?
Yeah.
I think for those of us who are sitting in administration now, maybe have a few gray hairs, we have a lot of work to do, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I think we have an opportunity as we serve that market, an audience, and I use the word market by design. Universities don't think about their students as customers and markets, but we do. How can we learn over here for our students on the resident students on the campus that might benefit the migration for the adult learners who we're currently serving? So that's how we're looking at it.
That's fine. Thoughts about this?
Yeah. Through the conference, I found that there are many changes in the CEE in the United States and other countries. For example, there are some education programs market-oriented and to serve for the demands of the students or the business. So I think it's maybe it's a good example for Chinese universities to make the CEE in the future. On the other hand, the MOOCs is emerging and blooming in the United States today. So I think in China, we should strive to push the MOOCs, the growth. And even in our company, I'd like to push the development of the MOOCs. Of course, I will think of how to use the outsourcing of the MOOCs. For example, to share the MOOCs with the universities, and on the other hand, I will think how to develop ourselves online courses rapidly and meet the requirements of the employees, keep their learning. Yes, that's my thinking.
I think we don't have any more questions that have come in over the app, but we have folks with microphones.
And if I may, I just wanted to add one thing to something Paul had said, this notion of Stanford for a lifetime versus Stanford at a point in your life. One of the things that universities are great at is they have all of this curriculum, right? And why is it that every time I get a call from where I went to school, I mean, what is the main reason why people hear from their alma mater? Give us money, right? What if a university stepped out on a real limb and decided we're going to build a specialized professional development program for alumni, and we're going to call our alumni, and instead of ask for money, we ask for engagement, we ask for involvement, we ask for them to come back to the family, and then we say, and if you like what we did, send us a check. But if you didn't, that's okay, because we want you back. And I've had this conversation with so many different customers all across the country, because I work with universities all across the country. And nobody has thrown me out of their office when I've suggested it, but no one has executed on it either. So, you know anybody who might be able to launch such a program, Paul?
Actually, this proposal I floated 6 months ago.
I might have stolen the idea from you.
To the dean's office, and we're gonna be doing something along these lines.
Okay.
So there's a scrubbing factor that the lawyers want us to get on, so we're working on it.
Watch
Okay.
this space then.
Cool.
We have people poised with microphones. Just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. Otherwise, I think what I would like to do is sort of bring that a little bit closer to home. That this was sort of an open-ended question about reflections from this wonderful conference. What either do you plan to do? And I'm going to go, ask each of you to respond to this. I'll start with you, Paul. Just work my way back to Ms. Feng. What do you expect or plan to do differently as a result of things you learned here this week, or what would you recommend others do? I think Ian has given us a wonderful suggestion there that is almost obvious, but something that we just don't do. Maybe it's too obvious. Things that you would expect to do or would recommend others do.
I mean, I think we probably need to have, maybe it's the time that IACEE sees this notion of credentialing a non-traditional student and make that integrated into the campus, so that it's not, so it's not this program over here. It's actually part of the thing that all of us do as universities. So that's certainly something that I see as an opportunity to foster that dialogue inside of Stanford, and also with colleagues. If you have tips and thoughts, let's talk.
Monday at 8:50, when my plane lands to Helsinki, I will go to office immediately and I'll talk to my boss, and I will say that we are just doing our business strategy for next 5 years future. I'm going to say that let's really think about what the digitalization means to us. What do we want it to mean to us, and really with who do we want to accomplish it. So I like the notion of it's not about competition between around contents, it's about the networks, and we really have to think, who do we want to network with, because that's what we need to start to do much more.
Co-opetition.
Mm-hmm. There you go. When I go to my office, the one without the door, I will think about those universities that I work most closely with and really challenge them to launch such a program for alumni. Because one of the things that I so often hear, I work mainly with large public university systems across the US, and so much of the responsibility of a president of that institution nowadays is fundraising. Now, and I'm not completely in love with that notion, because I think they should be doing things other than just fundraising, and they are, but that's a primary responsibility because of the state appropriations for state universities. But I'd love to challenge them to do something to serve their alumni. And guess what? If they do that, the money will follow, right? Somebody told me, do what you love and the money will follow. Well, do unto those that you love, your alumni, and the money will follow. So I'll give that further thought when I get back.
Yeah, I think the world is changing so quickly. I think we should have a small change in CEE. Just the last E should be changed into L, learning. Just a continuous engineering learning. So if we change L to L, that the both sides of the university and the business can change. Why? And the universities can look to find ways how to cooperate with the business. And on the other hand, business also should be active to find the ways to cooperate with the universities better. Yeah, that's my suggestion.
Well, we have another minute, so I'll put myself on the hook here too, since I was at this program. And I guess what I've been encouraged by in what I've heard, and I've learned a lot from all of you, that we need to really keep experimenting and trying some things that really are very different from what we've done in the past, whether it's programmatically, technologically, or even outside of the sort of line of business that we've seen ourselves in. I mean, I think that to a tremendous extent, what might have been considered consulting as opposed to education and training is an area that clearly that organizations like ours may find themselves getting into to help define, if nothing else, to help define the kinds of education and training programs in a more traditional sense that we deliver going forward. So I intend to try at least 2 or 3 experiments over the next year, and maybe one of those will get refined and turned into something that I or my colleague Diane Lancedale from the University of Michigan will be presenting to you about in Porto. I hope all of you have entered those dates into your calendar. It seems like a long way off, but it's really not. It'll be here in the blink of an eye. So think about what you can do when you get back home that will be worth talking about to this group and to others in Europe in 2 years. And I think, Paul, I'd like to note that, like a Swiss train, it's 5 o'clock.
Wow.